I would like to thank all three panelists for joining us. And yeah, unfortunately, we failed to have a completely 50-50 gender neutral balance at this panel because of Victoria's having a last-minute obligation that she could not skip. I was thinking about this gender balance and gender equity issues yesterday when I saw the first two panels that were exclusively 100% women there. So I was thinking to myself that, you know, at least I'm lucky because I will have two great ladies and two great gentlemen to participate in our session, in our panel. Yeah, now it's 2-1. Yeah, I mean, without any further ado, because I've noticed in the previous sessions for all of you or some of you that we have been following the whole thing from the beginning, that we tend to need more time than the 50 minutes that we have. So the purpose of a moderator is actually to try and facilitate the discussion by giving more time to the participants rather than himself or herself. So having said that, and thanking again Eva for the kind words, for having this, the contribution of Eva in having this event and having this project within EVPA is pivotal, is very important. Without Eva, we wouldn't have been here. And of course, if I would like to extend this in a different level, also without Doug, we wouldn't have been here because Doug is one of the founding fathers of EVPA. So without Doug, there would be no EVPA and no Collaborate for Impact subsequently. So that is just a very short introduction for my part. Very quickly, since we have two gentlemen and one lady, I would skip a little bit the traditional savoir-vivre way of doing things. So I would rather start with Eric, then continue with Olena, and having at the end Doug to close the first round of let's say interaction. And yeah, I mean, Eric, I don't have something more to say rather than maybe if you would like to in 30 seconds to explain to us what does a Swede doing in Poland since '95, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, we know that we're traditional links between the Nordic people and the Baltic Sea from the age of the Vikings, but is there something more that you can tell us?
Thank you, Georgios. Well, it's not terribly exciting, but I came here, started traveling on Central Eastern Europe and Poland in the mid-90s from a business perspective. So I've been in private equity in my normal career for the last awful number of years, 25, and with a big focus on Poland, where we saw a lot of opportunities. Then I moved here in some 18, 19 years ago and stayed here, not only for business reasons, but also for family reasons. And then that has also transitioned to an engagement in venture philanthropy since 2014 through Valores.
Great. So yeah, you know, it's you have the next 5 to 7 minutes to tell us whether you think it's necessary to speak about a specific case, your specific case, or rather to discuss a little bit a more general perspective of the involvement of businesses and funds into shaping or reshaping the environment, especially after the COVID, which was a great shock for everyone, I assume.
Yeah. No, I'll share some brief background on some of the activities as exemplifications and at least some observations from my side. So as Eva mentioned earlier, Valores, we established Valores as the first venture philanthropy fund back in 2014. And here a big thank you also to Doug here as one of the instigators. It took a few trips to Poland to convince some of us to spend some time on some really important issues. And we finally got our act together and set it up in 14. So we've been going for some 6-7 years now. And the whole modus operandi is basically Valores being being initiated by a number of private equity professionals, and where we have been successfully raising some money in the private equity community and engaging in these social organizations. So we work with our organizations in a way like we do in our professional lives with portfolio companies that we invest money in and own, but here we give some grants over a 3-year period. And then we work with these organizations and the management teams over 3-year periods, meet them at least once a month, and focus on a variety of issues as we help them to grow. So we focus on strategy, we help them in fundraising, financing, developing the team, the organization, etc. And key for us here is, and that is a lot of hours that goes in from us as founders and partners, and also from the team. We have one lady, Agnieszka, who runs what they do, who is the managing director. So we spend a lot of time with these organizations, and the key here for us is impact, and have these organizations, take them to the next level and have a bigger impact in terms of numbers, in terms of deepness of impact. So we focus also on impact measurement and impact management. So we've also trying to develop our own tools to have a better way of measuring the impact that our organizations have. So we've raised some 500,000 euros in the first round, then another 700,000 in 2019. Have been or are active in some 13, 14 organizations throughout Poland, one being a Ocalenie. So to give you a flavor of what can we do and why do they find us attractive? Because one thing is, of course, the money, but there's always money at the end of the day. And Ocalenie works with refugee and immigrant families in Poland, and they're helping them with legal advice, language training, social assistance, and helping the kids integrate into schools, etc. But they came to us because they had a fantastic new pilot project called Welcome Home, where they take all families and provide them with a 3-year program to really get integrated into the Polish society with social assistance, making sure the kids progress in schools, the parents learn Polish properly and get integrated into the job market over a 3-year period. We thought that was a fantastic program, wanted to help them expand that. And at the same time, they also had financing problems because, well, it's maybe not the easiest political environment that this organization has been living in Poland. So a lot of the public funding disappeared. So initially they had 5% was private funding. Now, 4 years later, we have plus 60% is private funding. So they've been able to shift that, and they've been able to establish the Welcome Home program. Quite small numbers still, but some 18 families now, with the target to get to 50 families the next couple of years. They've been able to attract corporate sponsors and donations also from IKEA and others. So it's really great to see them being able to grow. The last point before running out of time, Jorgos, is why is this? What does it give us? Why do we get myself and my colleagues involved in this, and what do we get out of it? First and foremost, we've seen these countries develop rapidly over the last 30 years, and it's been great to a large extent, but we have a large part of the societies that have been left in the wayside, and that's the weakest. So there's enormous need for it. And I think there's a fantastic match with the private equity community in our respective toolkits that is very useful for the organizations that we work with. For us, I think as individuals, myself and my colleagues, it's an enormous energy boost to work with these organizations, because they are led by founders that are passionate like there's no tomorrow. They are engaged, they work day and night, and they certainly don't do it for financial incentives. So it's an enormous energy boost to work with these guys and help them grow their organizations. And we are used to work in the private equity community and business community. We of course used to work with financial incentives, left, right, and center. Bonus if you get to a certain target, and share option, what have you. And here we work with organizations where that is not the driving force. So it's finding other ways also to to motivate and engage your colleagues, which we bring back, I think, to our normal or for-profit organizations in our daily job. And then I'll probably leave it there, Giorgos. So hopefully I kept your 5 minutes roughly.
Well, Eric. I mean, it was really, it was indeed 5 minutes exactly. Thank you very much for being very short, but also very with a lot of information. I already took a couple of notes, and when the discussion is going to unfold in the second part, we are going to come back in a few things that you've just mentioned. So thank you very much for the time being. I would like to pass the floor now to Olena. Olena comes from, as Eva said, from Luminate, which is a global philanthropy network that was established relatively just 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Olena, please correct me. And what struck me when I was reading about what you have done and what are your strategic vision and policies is that you are financing at Luminate and supporting not only NGOs, SPOs, not-for-profit organizations, but also for-profit organizations. And it's something that it's not very common in our field. And especially in the place where you are responsible, in the countries where you are responsible, Olena, in some of the former CIS republics, Ukraine in particular. So yeah, we are quite curious to listen, to learn a bit more about what you are doing in those countries, because of course the project, the Collaborate for Impact project, is also bound around these countries. And one of the main, let's say, aims, the main targets that we have strategically is to raise awareness about exactly the kind of work Luminate is doing. So yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Giorgos. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I'm sure this event will be quite important for development of investing for impact in our region. So of course, I'm happy to present the work that Luminate is doing in Central and Eastern Europe. First of all, I'm leading our investments in this region, as well as any advocacy and any other representative work. And as you mentioned, Luminate was founded about 3 years ago, but actually our history is much longer. So I'm happy to provide some more context about it. We are part of Omidyar Group, which is all the entities that are funded by Pierre Omidyar, the founder of eBay. So when eBay went on IPO and Pierre became billionaire, he decided that he needs to do something good with all this money. And that is how he came to found Omidyar Network. It was a philanthropic investment firm that dealt with any kind of individual empowerment for good. And Luminate is actually part of Omidyar Network for quite a long time. So I myself is with the same team for already almost 6 years. At some point, we became so big as a team that worked on governance and citizen engagement initiative that it was spun off from Omidyar Network. And since 2011, we are an independent entity called Luminate. But we are still proud to be part of Omidyar Group family. And of course, we keep close contacts with all our colleagues worldwide. So Luminate is a global organization, and our mission is to build fair and just societies which have a lot of components in this. So Eva mentioned, for example, independent media. We also work very close with such subjects that digital rights, any kind of intersection of technology and society. So how a new technological world would impact society and rights of people in this age. We also devote a lot of time to transparency of financial flows and civic empowerment of different groups. And I'm quite happy to lead our engagement in Central and Eastern Europe because when I joined, it became quite clear for me how less capital is available in this region compared to, for example, Western Europe, US, or any other part of the regions. It's a bit unfortunate, I think, because now in financial world, there's so many different instruments available for someone who wants to do work with impact. There are different kinds of loans, different kinds of grants, while for CE region and Eastern Partnership countries, almost all money are still governmental funded aid, for example, which is super great. But it actually led me to think that the diversity of capital is very much important for the companies. When they experience funding from different types of funders, it actually makes them more resilient and more sustainable. So we are glad to play this role of private funders for many teams in Poland, Ukraine, Baltic countries, Georgia. And I think our investment model is actually also quite innovative for the region because, as you already mentioned, we operate what could be called hybrid capital. So we can support both for-profit and non-profit companies. And this works just amazing because whatever this legal system of the team, if you really believe in this particular startup or NGO or whatever initiative has the legal structure, we practically have possibilities to support them whenever the legal system is. So I'm really glad to be part of this initiative, and actually through advocating for more funders of different types coming to CE region, this is how I got also connected with EVA and European Venture Philanthropy Association. We are proud members, of course, and that's why I'm really glad that we can connect and do this work together.
Great. Thank you very much, Olena, also for keeping the timeline as well in 5 minutes. I'm sure that we will have a few more things to say in the second part. I already have a couple of questions. But having said that, I would also like to give the floor to Doug. I mean, there's not much to say about Doug and IVPC. Starting from 2005, when EVPA was founded, he and the other 4 founding fathers of EVPA, but if I may say so, he was the driving force behind all the others. They saw that there is a tendency, there is a possibility, there is an opportunity, you can call it any way you like, for social investors, for venture philanthropists, even for some classical philanthropists at that time, to get together and coordinate their efforts towards societal change. And now, after 16 years, we've reached the point where EVPA has grown. Calendar-wise, we are still teenagers, but we have matured in a lot of ways, and we quite happy every time the possibility is given to us to invite Doug, because he always has something very, very important to say. What I wonder only, Doug, today is whether you are going to talk at this point about IVPC or a specific example that you have in mind, or you would like to give us a more general overview of how social investors can drive societal change, and whether this is something that you have already foreseen back in 2005, or it's been shaping ever since, especially in the past few years. The floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and I'm very pleased to be here. Just a couple of comments before I get into my, hopefully my 5 minutes, but in terms of gender equity, I want to say that all 4 of our regional membership organizations are led by very dynamic women. So women are leading the way in Europe, in Asia, in Latin America. Actually, I'm wrong. Africa is led by a man, but it has 50-50 in terms of directors on their board. And of course, Eva has been the driving element in Central and Eastern Europe since she and I first met 11 years ago. So EVPA was a night jump, and by that I meant that the 5 of us from the private equity industry saw the social issues, We had also been in the private equity industry since the 70s, and we'd seen that go global. So we decided that we would see as our contribution to society whether we could help the venture philanthropy movement go global. And we refer to it internally as accelerating the evolution of philanthropy. And we started with a 25-year plan, and we now think it's endless. But congratulations to all of those who have been part of that plan. Now, my purpose today actually is to promote collaboration and in any way possible. A little background, my first trip to Central Europe was before many of you were born. I visited 5 countries in 1974, and that was Hungary, Czech Republic, the former Yugoslavia, Ukraine, and Russia. Subsequently, I did work once the breakup of the Soviet Union happened, and was doing work in private equity in Central Europe, which is how I met the group in Poland, which eventually, as Eric mentioned, also became the founders of Valoris, along with Eva. So I know many of you weren't born at that time, but I have seen huge evolution and development in all of the countries, obviously with a number of political and economic challenges. I wanted to mention with Elena that she may or may not know this, but Omidyar was one of the early supporters of EVPA. So I've never gotten the opportunity to thank Pierre, but so the second thing which is important to me here is that when we formed the EVPA and the sister networks, it was to promote more collaboration and social investment across the whole continuum of capital. So whether it's grants, soft loans, convertible equity, or pure equity, as long as social impact is a priority, and we're not exclusive to any of those funding methods. We also consider ourselves as conveners, i.e., this activity over the last 3 days, and thank you to the EEU for their help on that. We're also catalysts, as Eric mentioned, in new initiatives, and we create new initiatives around inequality, around gender, around climate, around workforce development, et cetera. And then we're facilitators. So if you get somebody interested in something, then you have to do something that helps them actually translate their interest into action. And that's what we did with Valores and other groups. So I'm gonna, my comments today are what I call generic. It doesn't matter whether you're in Hong Kong or Thailand or Argentina. If you're going to have collective action, these are things that I would recommend. So first of all, individuals can have all of the social intent that they want, but even if you're Bill Gates, you often need partners. It might be a content partner, or it might, if Gates, you probably don't need funding partners, but Omidyar undoubtedly has partners in what they do. So it might be small, which most of them are much smaller than the 2 that I've mentioned. It could be a giving circle. It could be a fund. Any of those, you need to collaborate with others, because otherwise you're not going to make, you're going to feel good about yourself, but you're not going to make that much impact. So first of all, on the fund, we strongly recommend that you pick your area of interest. In private equity, we call it spray and pray, where you essentially invest across a whole spectrum of things, knowing that a few of them are going to work and they'll pay for the rest of your investments. It doesn't work that way in the social space, and it shouldn't work that way because the outcomes are too important. So we always say, rather than just investing across the spectrum, pick what is in your heart, and that might be children, it might be at-risk youth, it might be environment, workforce development, or what have you. But then spend a lot of time understanding the within your country or within whatever your investment area is. Find out what's going on. Don't just jump in and start doing things. And we generally say it takes 6 to 10 months. I've formed 4 of these organizations, these networks, and I spend 2 years going around meeting people, understanding the different dynamics within the continent and then within the countries. So be very knowledgeable before you jump into the water. Number 2, investigate within your area, whether it's in education or health or what have you, what's happening in other countries. Almost every country has the same issues around health and education and environment. And what we see going on a lot is recreating the wheel. And the way to do things effectively is to go find people who are doing something good and then adjust that model to whatever the circumstances that you see in the area that you're working in. Also look at different funding models. And by that, I mean, whether it's pure philanthropy or whether it's blended or whether it's impact investment. One of the issues around impact investment is there's huge amounts of money, but they can't find, at least at the smaller end of the market, they can't find opportunities to fund. So maybe there's an effort here to do incubators with social enterprises, which have the ability to become impact investments later. We also recommend strongly that you bring in value-added partners as funders. Now, I know that most people, they just take money from whoever they can, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the more that you can bring in people who bring something else to the party, and in this case, I'm referring mostly to corporates, and corporates are under a lot of pressure globally, as they should be, to give something back to society in general. But corporates bring money, they bring connections, and most importantly, from my point of view, they bring all of the human capital expertise of how to run a business. So next point is around human capital and intellectual capital alongside the money. You need to treat every one of the organizations you deal with, first of all, with respect, because the entrepreneur is the one who knows more about it than you'll probably ever know. And so we certainly don't like to see the funders and stuff telling the nonprofits what to do. You can advise them and you can encourage them. And in some cases you can kind of correct them, but you need to do that with respect. But every one of the organizations you deal with is a business, and they have to produce a product or service which is effective and which can produce outcome. Next one is, it doesn't matter how small your initial fund is. It depends on how far that money can go with the market that you're working in. I can't pronounce the Estonian name, but Good Deed Foundation, which I also helped catalyze in the beginning, they started with $150,000, and their latest fund is $600,000, and cumulatively they've done well. We started Impetus in the UK actually 3 of the founders of EVPA started Impetus. We started with $5 million and we're now at 150 million. Sorry, that's pounds. Nest is another example. I first met Nest in around 2005 or 6. And you see where they are today compared to where they started. At the time, they had a small room in, I'm going to say Budapest, and 1 and perhaps 2 people. Be sure you begin the impact measurement process and standards at the very beginning. This is so that you can evaluate your own success and you can help course correct if you're not meeting the standards that you hope to achieve. But it's also fundamental for when you go to future fundraising. It's not the feel-good factor anymore. It's, can you prove that all of your effort has achieved certain outcomes? Consider the exit strategy before you invest. Most funds or most giving, there are 3-year, 4-year max. In Impetus, we're now in our 17th year with one organization, which we've expanded into 12 cities beyond London, where we started. But you need to say, what does success look like when we have it, and what is it going to look like when we try to help them go to their next level? So I could go on.
Sorry to interrupt. You have 1 more minute, so please try to wrap it up. I hate to interrupt, but yeah, we have to be fair to the others as well.
No, I'm finishing right now. My next comment was, I know my time is limited, but as Eric mentioned, we helped facilitate the Valoris, and we've done this in many other countries as well. So we do have resources within the IVPC framework that can help, and we would welcome inquiries. This does not include substantial parts of money, I need to emphasize. But thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Doug. I think, and this is also something that we could maybe consider after we discuss a little bit how this event went and what are the lessons learned that maybe ever within the framework of this project we could, when time is right and when COVID is out of the picture, we could really invite Doug to come, I don't know, to Warsaw or to Kiev or to some other place in the region of interest and organize an event about his experience in the region and this kind of advice that only he can provide to social entrepreneurs in these countries.
Fingers so crossed, we are planning this. Fingers crossed.
Great. I'm so happy. I'll be also flying in if you invite me for that. I will not miss it. So I think besides thanking all 3 panelists for being very to the point, precise, and also respecting the time limits, we have 15 minutes approximately for a Q&A session. I have already received a question for Eric, comes from Elena Vasiliou, and Elena is asking you, Eric, what is your approach? I mean, I believe your organization's approach, not your fund's approach in raising money.
Well, now I presume the question is not for the organization we invest and work with, but for Valoris itself to keep us having fun. So we have, in a way, we've made it relatively easy because we have a very well-defined concept. So it's very much linked to the private equity community. And it's the private equity community professionals like myself, Rob Mance, etc., who we engage ourselves with our time, but also with our money. And so we have targeted very much the private equity community, notably in Poland, because this is where we operate, but a lot of the private equity funds operate on a regional level. So I think we maybe had 15 founders for the first fundraise back in 14-15. And then when we went back, we went back, of course, to the same, but also enlarged the group. The private equity community is relatively small, so people know each other. We got a lot of people engaged to work with the companies or the organization, both directly or helping out. That includes auditors and law firms, etc. And they also like what we are doing and want to get involved. So it has been relatively successful for us. I think, and a huge thanks, of course, to Eva, who's our chairperson and really leads that work. But I think coming back a little bit to what is required to do that, maybe we are a bit lucky that we have a well-defined target to go after when we fundraise, but it's very much being transparent and setting targets. And coming back, what Doug, you said earlier at the very outset, for each organization we grant money to and get involved in, we have a business plan, and it's KPIs and impacts that are measured on a quarterly basis. So at the exit after 3 years, we can present, we discuss it with the organization, but can present it to our funders. Okay, this is what we managed to achieve in each respective organization we've been involved in. And of course, not everything is a rosy picture. So some things we succeed with and some less so. But being very transparent and setting the targets for what you want to achieve in terms of impact from the outset, I think is key for us to go back to our funders and ask for more money in 2-3 years, and then again after in 5-6 years time. So that would be my key takeaways is set targets, quantify it, to be able to communicate what you have been achieved, because otherwise you won't stay for long.
Great. I omitted saying to all our participants that should you have any questions like Elena had, please feel free to send them on our chat so that I can read them and transfer them to our panelists. Elena has a follow-up question. But a little bit staying on what you just said, Eric, if you allow me, and going back to what you said in the beginning about the Welcome Home project that you have been developing. You said that it is a little bit, I mean, so far a small one, but I understood also that you have been quite satisfied with the way it has been developing. So are there any plans to scale that up? And I mean funding plans.
Yes, we are. I mean, just on the numbers, I should maybe clarify that the Welcome Home program is one new activity in the wide range of activities and programs that Otsalenje runs. So they touch some 3,000 plus refugees per year in their various programs. And in terms of scaling up, we've actually just been, I think, more or less official. So we've just decided to follow on with another investment into Otsalenje, because we felt that they've done a very good job, and we can now really scale it properly, both in terms of absolute numbers, geography, and also we've taken them through an impact measurement program to really go deeper in terms of what kind of impact the various programs have. So if it's for the refugees' family, it's both in terms of how well the kids are doing in school, do they progress, do the parents get jobs and get really integrated in society, how is their perception of their self-improvement and of that of the social assistance. And that we also want to take to the other programs of Otsalenje and really enable them to use that as a management tool in terms of how to prioritize their resources going forward. Because I think a lot of the organization's problem is to stay focused and prioritized. And that is partially to do with some of the funding sources we have, that some organizations tend to do whatever they can get funding for, not necessarily where they have the largest impact. But scaling is very important for us, and that's where while we're happy to take them to the next level and substantially higher level.
Great, thank you very much. It's good to know. This is a very hot issue, if I may say so, from also communication or media point of view, which leads me a little bit to my next question, related to what Olena and Luminate have been doing in Central and Eastern Europe. Being a former journalist myself and a communicator ever since I remember myself, I couldn't help it but dig in a little bit further onto some kind of particularly interesting projects Luminate is funding, especially when it comes to independent media in Central and Eastern Europe. And we all know that in the transition times in former Yugoslavia, former Soviet Union, and all the former Eastern Bloc countries, we have been facing enormous challenges with media of all kinds. So I would like to ask Olena how easy or difficult, you can tell us, it is to invest into independent media, because everybody claims to be really independent, but actually the vast majority is not. And whether in terms of risk, this is something that is only, I mean, it falls into the category of spray and pray, as Doug says, or it's just pray, because I feel that with media, we only pray lately.
Thank you so much for this question, especially this attention to independent media. And of course, this is a very dear subject to us. And for example, PR Media committed $100 million to independent media worldwide. It's not all coming through Luminate, but it comes from different entities, and Luminate participates in these commitments, of course. I should say, whenever we have any budget for independent media in the region, we do spend it all, just because there's quite a lot of innovative teams working in very different directions. And we have a very detailed strategy, publish it on the website, to help teams identify how they can qualify for our funding. And for example, with independent media, we have 3 different categories, what we are looking for. It could be investigative teams, and of course, nobody speaks about business models for investigative teams. It's crucial for them to have funding, not to think about how to be profitable. We also have engagement on the business models, and I think this is how media market knows us, because we invest a lot not only in the entities itself, but also in capacity buildings, providing advice how to build memberships, for example, how to do this media sustainable, because in contrast to investigative media, we do believe that especially local media should be supported also by people. And that is why we also try not to engage with more than about 1/3 of the budget to such media entities, not to make them dependent on our funding. And we also invest a lot in infrastructure. So it could be different types of funds or projects for media, as membership puzzle project, for example, that works with different teams worldwide. And we enter into this global program specific requirements to have participants from Poland, from Ukraine, from Georgia, so they would encourage people to apply. Because frankly speaking, we are big funders, so our engagement starts from about 100K in dollars, which is quite big for most of the media organizations, especially if you can do this like quick math. So if we tend to be only 1/3 of the budget and we can start from $100,000, it already means that they should be quite established. That's why we really try to help also them grow to the level when we can support them.
Great. It's good to know that we have funds and organizations like Luminate that support independent media, because it is indeed a field that affects us all. But on the other hand, yeah, it's like a minefield, especially in the countries that you are active, Olena, with all these restrictive regimes that have been in place, and in some places are still there. It's quite difficult to flourish as an independent media outlet. But thank you very much. This is great work that you have been doing. Being time conscious, again, we have only 3 minutes. I have a question again from Elena, and I think, although it's not written, I think it's something that maybe Doug ex officio can answer. Elena is asking Doug, what are the motivations of impact investors, and whether there is a special narrative or some special criteria which help them to decide in which area to invest. What would you say about that?
I would say that there's a huge amount of diversity of the impact investors. The other thing that I would also like to stress on that, though, is there's impact investment that comes from pension funds, insurance companies, and stuff, which have fixed obligations which they have to meet. So these people are conservative. They invest in really big things, generally social housing, generally clean energy, things like that, where you can invest a lot of money. We deal with a whole lot of high net worth individuals like Pierre Omidyar, and what they're most interested in is actually the social impact. They do impact investment because they believe that it's more sustainable for the organization itself to survive, but they don't really care, and I'm not speaking for a particular person here, with the financial return. What they would like to do is to get their money back in 1 or 2% and some proven impact. So if you're doing an impact investment fund, particularly in Central and Eastern Europe, I wouldn't go around promising a whole lot of return of money. What I would promise is the return on the social impact side. And if these organizations work, you get your money back. And I do this myself. I get the money back and then I invest it somewhere else, or I reinvest it. So don't overpromise, because you're going to be held to those promises. That's a fairly wide answer, but it only fits in a minute.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you, and thank you for being so concise, Doug. Is there anything that Eric or Olena would like to add to that? I mean, as I think about it, I don't know if Olena, for example, there is a very interesting project that I have fished up strolling in your website, Omidyar. Maybe in relation to the question, would you like to say a few words about that as well?
I would maybe just mention something that inspired me when I was joining Omidyar network and Luminate. Now it was written that Pierre Omidyar said that he believes that all people are good. It's just sometimes they're missing something, motivation, money, support to uncover this goodness. And this is actually the key for his impact investing philosophy. It's just like sometimes we just need to provide this support, money, investments to uncover all the positive changes that we can have for society. And I think this should be a good motivation for anyone who would love to get engaged with impact investing.
Great. Eric, something to add, maybe?
No, well, a last comment would be in terms of which areas to invest. So I think it's selecting your partner, because we invest quite agnostically, whether it's homelessness, ex-prisoners, it's disenfranchised youth, etc., etc. And our driver is the impact and scaling, and what we see is where things go very well, it's where we've selected a partner that we've teamed up. So the leader or the leaders of that organization who really want to do more, because of course there are many organizations who've been doing fantastic work for the last 10, 15 years, but they might not really want to grow the organization or grow the activities, because that creates more problems. So it's more colleagues, more employees, more requirement to secure funding, etc. But that's kind of one of our lessons learned in Valore is really making sure that we get in with the right partner who has the ambition to scale it up, and it's also up for a bit of challenges from our side, because we tend to be quite demanding in our collaboration with the organization and their leaders.
Thank you very much. These are really great answers, I think, from all three of you. And, you know, I think we made Elena and the other participants quite happy. I would like to invite Maria, because she also said from Georgia, from My Sister Social Enterprise, to stick around to the networking session. And maybe there you can address this particular issue of cooperation pro bono to either of our panelists. Wrapping it up, we exceeded the time only by 3 minutes. Sorry, Eva. Again, a huge thank you to all three of you. It was a pleasure. We managed, I think, in 50 minutes to shed a little bit of light in what you are doing. And as we said, there is a networking session later on, and of course, there's a promise that Doug eventually will come to the region in the near future. So with that, I will leave you and I will pass the floor to Eva. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was really great. Thank you. Thank you for all your sharing. And, you know, well, I can just say, keep the good work, right? And keep on inspiring others, because I think the examples of your work can inspire more people. So thank you so much.